Despite the fact that the bow traces its origins back to the Stone Age, it remains one of the least studied weapons in history. The main reason? Bows were made entirely from organic materials, which don't exactly hold up well over thousands of years. And the further we go back in history, the fewer written sources we have, especially since medieval and ancient chroniclers weren't too keen on describing weapons in detail. As a result, this topic is full of speculation and guesswork, and when the debate turns to comparing the complex recurve bows of the East with the simple English longbow, things can get heated. Now, I'm not claiming to be an expert, but I do have an opinion on the matter. And rather than jumping straight into bow comparisons, I think it makes sense to first talk about the people who used them. If we don't go too far back in time, the Eastern recurve bow is most commonly associated with nomads. Though, to be fair, it was also used by the Persians, Chinese, Slavs, and several other settled civilizations. The bow itself had a complex limb structure, allowing for a longer draw in a compact design. It was made from layers of wood, horn, and sinew, all glued together with adhesives typically sourced from fish bladders or animal tendons. Some sources suggest that this type of bow design dates back to the 3rd millennium BCE. What I can say for sure is that the Scythians were already using it extensively, and it's not hard to see why nomads placed so much emphasis on archery. Their way of life revolved around pastoralism, where slaughtering livestock was most practical in autumn and winter. In summer, their diet relied heavily on dairy products and game. Living in the wilderness, constantly on the move, meant that hunting, essentially using the natural resources of the steppe, was second nature. And of course, they needed a way to fend off predators attacking their herds. That's why nomads trained in archery from childhood. And in many cases, even women learned to shoot. Now here's where a common misconception comes in. Many assume that since nomads practiced archery from a young age, they were all incredible marksmen. But that's not quite how it works. In addition to riding and shooting, men had other responsibilities: crafting, managing livestock, and handling daily chores. Not to mention, everyone has different natural talents and physical abilities. For example, someone who jumps a lot is going to do it better than most. However, to achieve exceptional results, they need to do squats with weight and other exercises. Maybe not the perfect analogy, but you get the point. Simply doing something regularly doesn't automatically make you a master at it. There's no doubt that nomads excelled at archery and would likely outshoot modern archers in a hunting scenario. But that doesn't necessarily mean the average Scythian, Mongol, or Turkic warrior could win a major modern archery competition. Because professional athletes don't just practice, they train with specialized exercises, and their accuracy standards are much stricter. That said, widespread archery skills among nomads gave them an incredible advantage in terms of military mobilization. In Europe, things were different. The longbow, a simple, slightly curved wooden staff when unstrung, had been around for a long time. But by the High Middle Ages, warfare was largely the domain of feudal lords, who mostly fought among themselves, following certain rules and favoring close combat. Meanwhile, over 90% of the population was made up of peasants, who were increasingly tied to the land. Their role was to farm, not fight. Hunting became more of an aristocratic pastime, and as a result, the bow fell out of favor. However, the Crusades changed things. Encounters with skilled Arab and Turkic archers led to a response. Crossbows and, to some extent, bows started regaining popularity in Europe. At the same time, cities were growing, becoming a counterbalance to feudal power, and the Catholic Church, likely seeing urban militias with bows and crossbows as a threat to knights and the existing order, made multiple attempts to ban ranged weapons. That said, while cities did establish small units of archers, the vast majority of peasants remained unarmed. But in the 13th century, King Edward IV of England, after fighting the Welsh, personally witnessed the devastating effectiveness of their primitive yew longbows. At that time, England had a somewhat unusual social structure for Europe. While the best farmland was cultivated by dependent peasants known as villeins, nearly half the population consisted of freeholders. Feudal lords could hire them for certain tasks, and these peasants paid a fixed rent, but overall they were their own masters. This made them ideal candidates for mercenary work. Edward I, who had seen skilled archers not only in his wars with the Welsh but also during the Crusades, decided to try something interesting. He started promoting archery among free peasants by organizing competitions with cash prizes. This led to a rather unique system. Those who could shoot decently were drafted into a kind of militia for a set period. They weren't paid, but they got a share of war loot. The more skilled archers were offered contracts, earning between 3 and 6 pence a day, enough to buy between 14 and 27 liters of beer. The best of the best were recruited into the feudal army, where they served full-time in military campaigns. Along with good pay, they received various perks. When signing up, archers were provided with a bow, an initial supply of arrows, clothing, and, for contract soldiers, protective gear, sometimes even a horse for transport. However, later on, they had to buy their own ammunition and food. For free peasants, who often weren't well off, archery became a real chance to make money. In a way, it's similar to how football became an opportunity for kids in modern Brazil. If a man made it into a feudal lord's retinue, he could dedicate his entire life to archery. That's why I think that while the average nomad was likely a better archer than the average English freeholder, the structure of England's archery system helped develop a small, elite class of highly skilled shooters. Some sources mention that the bones of English archers were unusually dense and even deformed due to extreme muscle development in their shoulders and back. Most likely they're referring to these medieval professionals. Overall, English archers were more advanced than nomadic archers in terms of military organization, making them an early form of a contract-based army. But when talking about archers, we can't ignore the bows themselves, and there are a few myths to debunk right away. The first concerns draw weight, which is measured in kilograms of force. Articles comparing these bows often exaggerate the advantage of one over the other. In reality, both designs could produce weapons with a draw weight of around 80 kilograms or slightly more. However, most war bows, both simple and composite, were closer to 40 kilograms. In other words, the limiting factor wasn't technology, it was human physiology. A more complex question is maximum range. Many people point to Ottoman Sultan Selim III, who allegedly shot an arrow from a composite bow over 889 meters. More recently, archer Joseph Manos managed to shoot over 600 meters with an Eastern bow, but only 412 meters with an English longbow. However, these records were set using ultra-light, specially designed arrows. Even a relatively light combat arrow with a proper warhead drastically reduces the range of any traditional bow, bringing the real maximum range down to around 300 meters. And as arrow weight increases, the range difference between a composite recurve bow and a simple longbow becomes smaller. Enthusiasts have run calculations showing that even an early yew longbow with a draw weight of 36 kilograms, firing a 52-gram arrow, delivers about 65 joules of energy. A Mongol bow with the same draw weight and arrow mass delivers 72 joules. So in the end, the difference is only about 10% in favor of the composite bow. However, I've come across claims that English longbows were generally stronger than their Eastern counterparts and that European arrows were heavier. This might be because shooting from a standing position on the ground is easier than shooting from horseback. The takeaway? When it comes to range, energy, and overall lethality, both types of bows performed similarly. Now, despite its simple construction, the English longbow, crafted in under 2 hours from prepared wood, went through its own evolution. And it wasn't just about increasing length. Some longbows grew beyond 2 meters. Over time, archers realized that the best wood for longbows came from yew trees that had grown in harsh conditions, which produced tightly packed growth rings. The best candidates were yew trees from the dry foothills of Italy and Spain, which the English actively imported. Since the properties of the outer and inner wood layers differed, this allowed for a natural composite effect, enhancing the bow's performance. The difference in wood properties played a crucial role, since during a shot, part of the bow compressed while another part stretched. Composite bows enhanced these properties by adding horn and sinew, and while both the English longbow and the Eastern composite bow had roughly the same stopping power, the latter offered some key advantages for nomads. It wasn't just about its compact size, which made it easier to shoot from horseback. It also had a slightly higher initial arrow speed, up to 20 meters per second faster than a longbow when using lighter arrows, though the difference shrank with heavier projectiles. This wasn't a big deal in battlefield conditions, where archers often shot in high arcs. But at shorter distances, it allowed for more accurate shots, since the arrow reached its target faster and required less elevation. That's one reason the Eastern bow excelled in hunting, something it was originally designed for. However, the horn-reinforced composite bow was expensive and often a status symbol. Many nomads used simpler wooden bows instead. Traditional nomadic archery competitions are usually held at ranges of 60 to 70 meters, while in England, archers trained at 100 yards, roughly 90 meters. This was likely because steppe archers often had to hit moving targets while hunting, which is much harder at long distances. English longbowmen, on the other hand, trained primarily on stationary targets. Overall, the Eastern composite bow was superior to the English longbow on average. But this difference wasn't game-changing. The true strength of nomadic archers came from their mass use of horses, which made them incredibly mobile. At the same time, while English archers lacked that mobility, as infantry, they could form tighter battle formations and unleash more concentrated volleys. So, while the Eastern bow was slightly better, I wouldn't go so far as to say nomadic archers were significantly more effective overall.